Hello, you're watching Context. I'm Orkan Amashov here. Pope Leo XIV's three-day visit to Türkiye, his very first one outside Italy as the head of the Catholic Church, is now underway and will be followed immediately by a second leg to Lebanon. The formal diplomatic relationship between the Holy See and Türkiye dates back to 1886, the year when the Ottoman Empire established its own representation to the Vatican, and the Holy See in turn created an apostolic delegation in Istanbul. That very moment marked the institutionalization of a relationship which in reality rested upon several centuries of earlier contact. Long before 1886, papal envoys had periodically traveled to the Sublime Porte, the name given to the Ottoman Empire back then, as early as the 15th century. The Franco-Ottoman alliance in 1533 designated France as the protector of Catholics in Ottoman lands. And those Christian minorities of the Ottoman Empire long formed an important component of the Vatican's wider approach to the Porte, shaping much of the Western world's engagement with the empire throughout the 19th century. Yet with the collapse of the empire and the establishment of the Republic in 1923, the nature of this relationship between Türkiye and the wider Western world, including the Church, changed fundamentally. The abolition of the system of capitulations and Ankara's reorganization of the legal and administrative status of religious communities marked a decisive and very fundamental departure from the 19th century framework. This particular visit, the current visit of Pope Leo, is officially tied and connected with the commemoration of the 1700th anniversary of the First Council of Nicaea, convened in what is now Iznik in Türkiye, a moment regarded as pivotal in defining Christian doctrine and ecclesiastical unity. Yet expectations go well beyond the ceremonial, of course. Pope Leo is widely anticipated to deliver messages centered on peace, interfaith bridge building and Christian unity at a moment when the situation in Gaza, Syria and across the wider Middle East weigh heavily upon regional sensibilities. And joining me now to unpack this whole situation, this importance of this visit and many other related matters is Bekir İlhan of the Türkiye Research Foundation, joining us from Ankara. Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, despite my introduction, during which actually I talked a lot about history, about the relationship between the empire and the Western world, we're going to focus on realities of today. We know that there have been actually 5 papal visits to modern Türkiye, Republic of Türkiye, over the past 70, 80 years. This particular one, the current one, is officially connected with the commemoration of the 1700th anniversary of the Council of Nicaea. But more beyond that, do you see any other reason for the new Pope choose Türkiye as first destination?
Yeah, as you said, Pope is currently visiting Turkey, and he will be staying here for a few days, and then he will go to the state of Lebanon. And yes, it's an important visit given the role of the Pope. We are talking about the Pope. He's a faith leader, but more than that, he's a very important faith leader. He's not just an ordinary faith leader. He is the head of the Catholic world and also has a very special place for the entire Christendom. For sure, this visit makes these things make this visit very important. But I would say, one particular reason for him to visit Turkey, I would say it's we can evaluate it in the regional context. I would say for sure, there will be bilateral relations between Turkey and the Vatican City, but more than that, I would say regional matters are very important issue. I would say at this point because there is an ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza right now, and I would say the Pope, could play an important role in terms of establishing peace or in terms of achieving peace in the Middle East, I would say, because, the Middle East as a region historically, has a very considerable Christian population and Catholic population, I would say, especially in Gaza, there are Catholic churches. and there are things in Gaza as well. And for that reason, I would say the Pope, as a faith leader, as an important faith leader, as a political leader, as a social leader, I would say for the Christian world, and could play an important role in achieving peace in Middle East. And for this matter, I would say for this aim, of course, Turkey is an important actor. Turkey, we are not talking about an ordinary country when we're talking about Turkey, for sure. Of course, given its GDP, given its military power, given its geographical area, yes, Turkey is an important country. But more than that, I would say, given its cultural heritage, given its the role in Islamic world, I would say, given its symbolic power, I would say Turkey is also an important actor or would be an important partner for the Pope for establishing or achieving peace in the Middle East. And there is another reason for sure, as you mentioned. It's the anniversary of the Council of Iznik, Council of Nicaea, and of course he will attend the celebrations as well. But I would say politically, this visit is important for regional peace matters, I would say.
How would you evaluate the current trajectory over the past decades involving relationship between Ankara and Holy See? We know that diplomatic relations between the two entities were established back in 1886 when Ottoman Empire was still in existence, but that there's a continuity in terms of legal personality. So the Republic of Turkey is a continuing has got this personality which is inherited that all of those ties dating back to the 19th century, as long as that 1886 is concerned. What I'm trying to say, that back then, before 1923, historians would, of course, naturally, many of them would say that the Vatican and also other Western powers were trying to use Christian minorities inside the then Ottoman Empire against the Istanbul Sublime Porte. But it looks like the nature of that very relationship has changed over the 20th century. So on the basis of this change, how would you evaluate the current dynamics between Ankara, modern Turkey, and Vatican?
Yeah, I would say, looking at the historical relations, I would say it's very complicated. It's very complicated for many reasons, I would say, historical reasons, regional reasons. And on the other hand, I would say many things have changed. Of course, we have right now, Turkey is a republic. Of course, we have Turkey has a Ottoman past. Ottoman heritage is very important for Turkey. It's a part of Turkish identity. For sure. But on the other hand, during the Ottoman era, yes. The relationship between Holy See, I would say, or Papacy and the Ottoman Empire was also complicated, and it was just a mad balance of power, I would say, during that time. Ottoman Empire, as you would remember, had also the title of Caliphate, sure. And this made Turkey or the Ottoman Empire made a very unique position among the Islamic world. But today, in the 21st century, as of today, of course, like I said, many things have changed, and I would say even legal entities have changed. The political religious status of Holy See itself changed in Italy, and also in Turkey. Turkey is a republic right now, and for sure the nature of relations has also been affected by these changes, I would say. Yes, for sure, during the late Ottoman period, I would say the Christian world, especially the papacy, tried to intervene in the Ottoman internal politics. They tried to use, or they tried to weaponize the Christian minorities in the country. But after the Republic, I would say these changed as well, because I would say we are not living in Middle Ages right now. Papacy also, lost, I would say, the majority of its political power. Of course, it's it has a very important symbolic or cultural, religious position among the Christian world. But in terms of political power, I would say they have also, lost to a certain degree their power, I would say. And right now, I would say, for sure, Turkey has a Christian population. Historically, Turkey, has a very important Christian population. But for this point, I would say, as of today, we are not in the same position today. We are not in the same position anymore.
But times change. We're changing with the times.
Times change and nature of relations change, I would say. Many things change, I would say. Of course, Christians are, the Turkish Christians, I would say, of course, they are citizens of Turkey. They have their rights, they have their duties, they have their freedom of religion, I don't think that they have a very important problems regarding the Turkish society and regarding the Turkish state, I would say. Of course, like in every societal group, has their issues, but I would say Christians, especially after the foundation of the Republic, I would say, have not experienced major problems, I would say, in general. I'm talking about general historical
What I wanted
context.
to focus on, Mr. Bakir İlhan, the reason why I made reference to 1886, the formal beginning of institutional relation between Turkey and the Holy See, I wanted to sort of remind our audience the perspective, the historical continuity in that relationship. Of course, naturally, in 1922, Sultanate and Caliphate were separated, and in 1924, Caliphate was abolished. Modern Turkey is a republic, and this administrative and legal status of those communities have changed. Times change, we're changing with the times, but there's also historic memory, in particular when it comes to Western mindset, when it comes to Turkey and its imperial past. It's all there, very palpable. I want to just change the topic slightly and move to the realities of current Middle East. We know that the Pope will be visiting Lebanon from the 30th of November to 2nd of December. Lebanon is a very interesting country, originally perhaps created as a Christian country, but now become multi-confessional. Very, very troubled country, of course. What sort of role do you think Turkey and Holy See could together play in relation to Lebanon, which has been fighting this long-term instability, and only recently, early this year, Lebanon has managed to form, nation has managed to form a government, proper government.
The Lebanon case is a very interesting case, I would say, because politically, it has been in turmoil, I would say, and it has a very fragmented society. There are Sunni Muslims, there are Shia Muslims, there are Christians, and of course there is a political instability in Lebanon, and also there is Israel, the Israel factor. Israel is continuing in their airstrikes to Lebanon, and for sure the Pope's visit to Lebanon will be an important sign, or it will be an important symbolic visit for the Christians who live in Lebanon, for sure. But together with Turkey, I would say, going beyond Lebanon, of course, in the Middle East. There are millions of Christians, millions of Muslims, and for sure, in Gaza, they live in coexistence, and I would say yes, the papacy or the Vatican City, the Pope himself, and together with the help of Turkey, I would say, can play an important role in terms of protecting the rights of religious minorities, religious groups, not just minorities, but all groups, because in the Middle East, I would say, yes, if you're a minority, if you're a religious minority, of course, that you have some problems, but on the other hand, it does not necessarily mean that just minorities having problems in the Middle East. Of course, there is. Do
you see it, Mr. İlhan? Do you see Holy See as an entity evaluating Turkey in the context of Middle East as a stabilizing force? Do you think is the perception of Holy See about Turkey as a power within the Middle East?
Yeah, I would say the Holy See probably, puts Turkey to an important position. Of course, on the one hand, Turkey is a European country. On the other hand, Turkey is also a Middle Eastern country, and I would say the Holy See sees Turkey, as a country which is located, between Europe and Middle East, and not just geographically. I would say politically, they think that Turkey could play an important role in stabilizing in Balkans, in Europe, and also in Middle East. And for sure, they think that Turkey, compared to other Muslim nations or other Islamic countries, Turkey has a very stable political system. Turkey has also very strong leadership right now, and also, Turkey, is in a stronger position in the affairs of Middle East, and for sure, they will seek help of Turkey in terms of achieving their regional aims, and also, probably they know that without Turkey, you cannot make major changes, major political changes, major social changes in the Middle East, and of course, I would say they are probably aware of that.
Yes, and also I would like to draw your attention to concurrent development, top US officials visit to the Middle East, and to dynamics involving Turkey and Israel. They are in many ways still at loggerheads in Syria, but there have been some efforts to achieve de-confliction between them, and Azerbaijan was playing its own humble role in achieving that purpose. Regarding Gaza, tensions still, of course, naturally remain. Israel is against Turkey being part of that stabilization force. There's a question of the expansion of Abrahamic Accords, Azerbaijan being viewed as part of that scope as well. In the context of the United States and their interest in the Middle East, do you see palpable efforts to ensure degree of cooperation between Israel and Turkey? Because it is very clear to many people, I imagine, those people that I've interviewed, all of them practically said this, that for US, having good functional relationship between Israel and Turkey is essential.
Yeah, I would say for sure the United States is a major power, and also it can play an important role in mediating conflicts or possible conflicts between Turkey and Israel, sure, but I would say considering the U.S. official visit, I would say the visit of Deputy Secretary, I don't think that it's going to be an important visit in solving the problems at this point, because it's going to be a bureaucratic visit, and probably he will handle technical issues between Turkey and the United States, or between Turkey and the neighboring countries, I would say, because I don't think that it's a politically important visit right now. And
no, I'm talking about the wider sense.
Yeah, the wider
beyond the scope of this particular visit, which may be not as important as many other visits. But basically, when it comes to Turkey and Israel, their relations at one point were absolutely fine a couple of years ago. Of course, what happened in October 2023 and the consequences changed the entire dynamics. And the animosity remains there, of course. We all naturally noticed it. But also it's very clear that there are those who are interested in good functional relationship between Israel and Turkey, and we understand that that will not be possible without Gaza situation being properly sorted out.
Yeah, regarding the relationship between Israel and Turkey, I would say for sure two topics are important. I would say one is Syria, and other one is Gaza for sure. And looking at Gaza, I would say there is a international stabilization force. There will be such a force, and there is a possibility that Turkey could also join such a force. And Israel is trying to trying to prevent Turkish participation, and also there is also Syria. In Syria also, Israel and Turkey have conflicting interests, I would say. For sure, the United States could play a mediating role, I would say at this point, the United States can put pressure on Israel, I would say, because Israel has some maximalist positions regarding Gaza and regarding Syria. say, and for reducing this kind of maximalism, I would say the United States government can put pressure on Israel, and after that, I would say for sure, Turkey and Israel maybe they can solve their problems in the long future. But for now, I would say, given the Israeli position, given its maximalist aims in Gaza and Syria, I don't think that a kind of rapprochement or a kind of an appeasement process, will take place in the short run. I would say, for sure, the United States can play an important role, as I said. But I think what matters here is that the relationship between the United States and Israel. And even if the United States tries to put pressure on Israel, I don't think that the Israeli government, the current Israeli government, will respond positively to the United States demands on Israel, I would say. And these things make, I would say, the current situation much more complicated in the midterm or in the long term, I would say. But for sure, the United States is also, trying to establish, political stability in the Middle East, because the conflict in the Middle East has become costly for the United States as well. Of course, the United States, has some costs, and the current government, the current Trump government, I would say, sees the war or the conflicts in the Middle East trivial conflicts. They think that it's an unnecessary region for the greater U.S. geopolitical aims, because the United States should focus on Russia, the United States should focus on China, but the Middle East, is not that much an important region in the geopolitical context for the United States, I would say. And so, for this reason, it's also to the benefit of the United States.
So are you suggesting that because Middle Eastern region, or rather Gaza situation, a situation revolving around, including Syria, is not as important for United States compared to some other regions, United States is less inclined to sort out these ongoing tensions between Turkey and Israel? Is that what you said in basic terms? Very brief explanation to that, and then we will finalize, Mr. Ilhan.
Yeah, for sure. I would say the United States would like to, engage in Russia and China, because these are important actors for them. But the Middle East seems to an unnecessary and costly region for them.
Well, but naturally, there are others probably might disagree with this point, but it's a very interesting point. I'm most grateful to you, Mr. Bekir Ilhan, for this interesting conversation. Of course, naturally, we discussed everything against the backdrop of the papal visit, the visit of Pope Leo XIV, 3-day visit, which has started today, will last until the 30th of November, and there will be then subsequent second leg to Lebanon. Thank you very much indeed for your time. So grateful.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Well, we discussed the circumstances revolving around Pope Leo's 3-day visit to Turkey, why the situation in the Middle East, the statements that are likely to be made by the new Pope, and also dynamics involving Israel, Turkey, and United States. Well, you've been watching Context, and see you very soon.